And we're back here to review the last book in the Thrawn Trilogy, The Last Command. What a journey this has been. I've had a lot of fun revisiting this trilogy and reviewing them, and I'm excited to get to the Thrawn Duology since I haven't actually read that. And I've come to love a lot of these new characters like Mara and Talon Karrde, and I'm loving seeing the original trilogy characters be given actual good stories, and I'm excited to see those stories continue. It's almost a bittersweet feeling now that it's over, since I'd had such a fun time with it. If I were to rank these three books, I'd probably have to go with Dark Force Rising, number 1, Heir to the Empire, number 2, and then I would have to put Last Command at number 3, though I'm not really sure about that placement. It's a toss-up between this and Heir to the Empire where they would place, but I think Dark Force Rising was my favorite one. And honestly, I think the ending, it wasn't exactly anticlimactic. I think it made perfect sense and was really fitting, especially Thrawn's ending. And for some reason, it never occurred to me that his Noghri bodyguard would be in on the plan to betray him and would be the one to kill him. Like, I just figured that guy's evil, he's on Thrawn's side, but of course he wasn't. I was as blind to the truth as Thrawn was. And his ending is essentially his schemes and his manipulations coming back to bite him in the ass, essentially. His manipulation of the Noghri, him not being able to realize that they had basically switched sides. And you could argue that even maybe his arrogance got in the way of his ability to see what the Noghri were actually doing. Obviously, he was pretty preoccupied with fighting the New Republic. And I'm excited to see Pellaeon's story continue. I'm like, I always knew that he would make it out and lead some of the Imperial forces in the future. But I felt kind of bad for him because he was all happy and then Thrawn was murdered and then they had to retreat. Obviously, like, at this point, he is just an antagonist to our heroes. Talon Karrde has been a real standout character for me, and he's had a pretty cool story in this book. He's a part of the ending with Sabayoth and that whole thing on Mount Tantus. I really enjoyed that. I've loved Wedge. He's shown up a few times. He's been in a bunch of battles, and I am excited to read those X-Wing series. I'm pretty sure he's like the main character, or at least one of them. So I'll be excited to check that out in the future as well. Mara Jade, her arc has been really well written. I feel like a lot of people have a really skewed, or they have a wrong perception of her. At least the fake fans who don't read these books, they don't know what Mara Jade is really like. They just see her as some hot redhead that ends up with Luke. And then they say, oh, well, if this character came out today, the chuds would hate her. But like, they wouldn't know that because they haven't read these books, so they don't know what she's actually like. And I enjoyed the fact that she doesn't really start to, at least, not hate Luke until around the second half of this book. So like, it took the whole trilogy for her to become more of a protagonist, or at least more aligned with Luke Skywalker. And for some reason, I had always remembered her being sent to capture Leia and the twins, but when I was reading this book, it actually turns out she was the one to save Leia, or at least help her from the Imperial forces who were sent to capture her. And that whole situation was dope. I loved that. Lando and Beliblis going through the temple and realizing, oh, the guards aren't where they're supposed to be, something is not right here, and then they go and try and save Leia. That was awesome. And super awkward for Thrawn because he's tried to capture Leia and her twins multiple times and he's just failed every single time. But a plot point that they resolve in this book, Delta Source, this information source that the Imperials are using on the New Republic, it being these plants that can pick up the sound of people talking and then send that signal through these like Morse code almost that the Imperials can decrypt and translate back into basic or English or whatever you want to call it. That was interesting. I really liked that. And that was like from the Emperor back when he was using the Imperial Palace and it was just his way of spying on senators and stuff. I really enjoyed that. That was cool. That was one of those things that I had just completely forgotten about. And for the longest time, I was like, Winter, it's Winter. She has to be the double agent. She remembers everything. She should be able to relay these information to Thrawn. Then Leia was like, oh, maybe it's a droid. And I was like, oh, it's got to be a droid. And then it was the plants. Like, I completely was surprised by that. I had no recollection of that at all. And I really liked Winter and Mara. They had a little moment where Winter is telling Mara about what she used to do for the rebellion, and then Mara's like, oh, you were this person, and she used her code name, but it was a code name that was very limited, like it wasn't used that much and was mostly a thing the Imperials called her, so that was her way of realizing Mara must have worked for the Imperials at some point. It was just like a little thing. I picked up on that, and like I'm glad that that was a thing that Winter brought up to Leia, I'm pretty sure. And I gotta say, the sequels, Disney have absolutely failed Leia. She was amazing in this trilogy. Her giving birth to the twins, that moment, young me just didn't know what the fuck was going on, because that was such an amazing moment. There's just nothing in Disney that comes close to that. It was beautiful. And I think just when I was younger, I couldn't appreciate this sort of stuff the way I can now. I was just like, yeah, whatever, she's giving birth, whatever. But it was just really well done. And she's like sensing the feelings of the babies as they're being born, and then realizing like her connection with them will be different from their connection with each other. And it's something that Han won't be able to experience. And it's kind of sad that he won't be able to have that same connection, but it's still beautiful. Like it was really well done. Timothy Zahn, terrific work. And I feel like the cloning, all of that stuff was handled really well. It didn't really feel out of place with stuff from the prequel trilogy. Though Sabayoth and the clone of Luke being Force sensitive, I can't really remember if that contradicts anything in the prequels that say the clones can't be Force sensitive, because I feel like that's been a Disney thing, but I haven't read the prequel stuff in a while, so I might have to look into that. They may have mentioned it in the Plagueis novel, but for this story, I think it all worked pretty well. And I love the callbacks to the cave on Dagobah that were done in this trilogy. First, you see it in Empire Strikes Back. Luke is essentially being shown a possible future of himself as a Darksider. And then in the first book, Heir to the Empire, he's shown a possible past where Mara could have essentially caused his death at Jabba's palace if she was allowed to go and watch his execution. And then when Luke is faced with this clone of himself, he gets that same feeling of being in that cave, seeing that dark side version of himself in Empire Strikes Back. That was all terrific. The way they write Sabayoth, he's clearly deranged, but you also feel like he is really powerful. And they say maybe he's even more powerful than the Emperor, and it's just the way he's able to like really get into people's minds. I don't feel like we see Palpatine do that much. There were some things at the end of this that reminded me of some stuff coming up in the future, I'm pretty sure. Like when Sabayoth is killed, all this dark side energy comes out, like blue flames almost. And when Vader throws Palpatine down the shaft in Return of the Jedi, that blue energy comes up in the film. So they're basically saying that is dark side energy being released because of Sidious's death. And I'm pretty sure that plot point will come back in a future story. And I don't know why it took me this long to realize, but Talon Card's ship is called the Wild Card. So it's basically just named after him. I don't know why it took me until I finished this book to realize that. And he had a pretty interesting story with the smugglers that comes back towards the end in the battle against Thrawn with Wedge Antilles. And that felt like a pretty decent payoff, though I wish I had gotten a little bit more from those characters. With how much time was spent on this plot by this smuggler coalition, I wish that was more relevant to the end of the story outside of just that battle. However, it's still potentially a thing going forward, so maybe in the Hand of Thrawn duology, that might be a part of that as well, because Mara is going to be sort of an intermediary between the smuggler ring and the New Republic, and I know that she is going to be a part of these next couple of books, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. And this is the Thrawn Trilogy, so when it comes to his character in this book, he did some pretty interesting stuff, and at the same time I was a little let down by his character's death, but at the same time I felt like it was fitting. I just wish there was a lot more of that character. It is called the Thrawn Trilogy. We could have gotten a lot more from that character, though I did like his plan to basically trap everyone on Coruscant with these asteroids that were cloaked. I thought that was pretty interesting. It was kind of resolved in a way that I thought was a little quick. They were thinking, oh, there must be like at least 100, at least 200 asteroids cloaked in the atmosphere, but it was only like 22. That was a little disappointing, but it also led to Card and Leia being able to go to Mount Tantus to help Luke. And when the Imperial forces who were sent to capture Leia and her twins, when they were doing that whole thing, Mara was speaking to Leia in her mind to warn her and tell her what to do. And then that comes back at the final battle with Sabayoth, where Leia is the one speaking to Mara, telling her what to do through the Force. And I just thought that was really cool. And when it comes to that duel between Luke and his clone, I did like the idea that it was created from the hand that was sliced off in Empire Strikes Back, and they recovered the lightsaber along with the hand, and that's how Luke got that original lightsaber that is Anakin's back. Just compare that to how it shows up in the sequel trilogy. Like, they don't explain that at all, and even in this it's like, really? It like survived that? It's not broken or anything, but like, fine, you know, fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. At least they gave us an explanation. And I like the fact that Luke gave it to Mara at the end, and she was using it in the fight with Sabaoth. She used it to kill him. And I'd be interested to see if that is ever referred to as Anakin's lightsaber. I'm not sure if it is. Either way, I like that it's included. I like that it's with Mara Jade. I feel like that is fitting, or at least how it's handled in the book. It doesn't feel forced or anything like that. And you compare it to how Rey gets it. It's like she's just handed the lightsaber by some random alien lady who we don't even know. And when it comes to The Last Command, the title of this book, I like how it was implemented in this story, where it's Mara's last command, or the last command she thinks she's been given by Palpatine. So when she kills the clone Luke, she feels like she has fulfilled that command, and she's essentially free to move on and let go of the past. That worked really well for me. And yeah, you know, this isn't really a super in-depth review. I had literally just finished the book right before I recorded this, and I really enjoyed this book, this trilogy. I'm super excited to get into The Hand of Thrawn. I'm excited to revisit some stuff from the prequels that I remember enjoying as a kid. I will probably do Labyrinth of Evil after The Hand of Thrawn. And then after that, I'll probably do the Revenge of the Sith novelization, just as a nice like pairing of those two books, just to change it up a little bit. And then I probably will go back to the Old Republic, because I had been reading some stuff. Then I kind of stopped and then did this Heir of the Empire stuff. So the Bane trilogy is probably going to be after that, and then I'll probably get back to the post Return of the Jedi era, but nothing is set in stone, so I could change my mind. We'll just have to wait and see. And that's all I really had to say. Thank you for listening. I'm Nara Dark. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys later.